Now, joining us now, General Wesley Clark, the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, retired US Army Colonel Peter Crean, Vice President of Education and Access at the US National World War II Museum as well. Thank you both for joining us. General, if I could first of all ask you about the speech that we heard from President Biden a bit earlier on. There were echoes of President Reagan's speech, which was very similar, talking about the dangers of isolationism, but also the dangers of tyranny. But President Biden, of course, able to tie in with what's going on in Ukraine right now. Did you think it was a good speech? Do you think it went too far? How do you think he toned it?
I think he hit the key points, because this is a moment that does call on the United States to step forward. We can't sink back into isolationism. And yet, really, since Reagan's speech, things have gone so well for the American public that the public really isn't into this. They don't see the gathering storm that's facing us in Russia and China, Iran, North Korea. And that's okay. That's leadership. And President Biden is showing that.
Let's just hear from some sound then from that speech so we can get a sense of it. Okay, we're going to come back to that if we can. We're just seeing Prince William arriving there. So the significance of Prince William whilst we're on him is that King Charles isn't able to go as head of state, so Prince William's standing in for him. And we've got the King of the Netherlands as well there, I think. But Colonel Crean, just talk about this gathering of world leaders that we're seeing unfold right now and the significance and the messaging to the rest of the world from that.
Well, I think it's indicative of the alliance that was formed on D-Day. You know, we often talk about the Americans landing on the two beaches or the British and the Canadians, but there were 12 nations that were involved with the landings in Normandy. And, you know, they didn't call themselves the Allies, they called themselves the United Nations. And so the world order that we know and understand today really is something that came out of World War II. And really the ascendancy of that happened on June 6, 1944, and in the days thereafter.
In terms of the veterans there today, we have this poignancy, haven't we, that they are dwindling in number. But the added poignancy is that the ones that are there now were the youngest ones in many ways, apart from the ones that died, obviously, that were there. And it's a reminder, isn't it, to young people today to try to get their head around the fact that people actually volunteered to do this, and that many of them lied about their age to be able to serve.
It's amazing when you talk to these guys.
These young
Sorry,
men,
General Clark. Yeah.
Yeah, these young men, a couple of years before this, had no idea what was going to happen to them. They didn't choose this mission for themselves. It was chosen for them. They stepped up and did their duty. They did it for themselves, the people they fought with, and they did it for the country. And the country was behind it 100% by the time this invasion occurred, because they knew, the country knew, and these men knew that this invasion was the way to end this war and end it with a victory and success.
Seeing there the Prince of Monaco, one of the smaller countries represented, but Colonel Crean, we've got to remember, haven't we? We talk a lot about Canada, the US and the UK on these occasions, but there are many more nations involved in this allied effort.
Absolutely. It truly was the Western democracies that were trying to save the world for freedom and democracy. And that's what they set out to do on the 6th of June, 1944, and we continue to do today. So it's one of those things that people don't really realize, that we are surrounded by the legacy and the lessons of World War II every day in our lives and in the world that we live in.
I need to ask you, General Clark, about NATO on this day. No major direct references there, but can we read something into President Biden's talk of isolationism? Is that a concern looking ahead to a possible Trump presidency and a lot of the language that he's used recently, and trying to emphasize the fact that whilst NATO wasn't around at the time, NATO was in part born out of what happened on D-Day.
It's very relevant to NATO today. The president's walking a fine line. He doesn't want a confrontation with Russia. But on the other hand, Russia can't be allowed to start a war and win it. So aggression can't be allowed to pay. And so the people of Ukraine are paying the greatest price to fight this off, and the nations of NATO are collectively, individually assisting Ukraine in the defense. But everyone understands that if Ukraine were to falter and fail, then the Russian threat would be immediately on NATO nations themselves, on the Baltics and on Poland. And so really, Ukraine's fighting for all of us. And this is the point that President Biden is trying to make. We have to look outward. We can't simply look inward. And of course, it's directly relevant to the presidential campaign. President Trump has been cozy with Mr. Putin. He's made allegations that say, if you don't pay your bill, Putin's going to take you. There are a lot of indicators that the Europeans certainly see it, that Trump presidency would mean maybe not a withdrawal from NATO, but a much less relevant, effective NATO, and they might be left to themselves in Eastern Europe.
Mm-hmm. And Colonel Crane, can I just ask you about President Zelensky's addition here and what you make of that? Because Ukraine wasn't part of this effort. Russia very much played a crucial role in the defeat of Nazi Germany. There's obviously an understanding that President Putin couldn't be invited today, but that doesn't take from the Soviets' contribution to this effort.
And you're exactly right. Most people don't really realize that 70% of the German army was fighting on the Eastern Front. They were fighting the Soviet Union. And of course, the Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union at the time. So many of the major battles of World War II happened right there in what is now the Ukraine, and to include some of the atrocities of the Holocaust. So, President Zelensky and Ukrainians understand that history deeply. It is their history. And so I think it's very fitting that he be there today.
Okay, thank you so much, Peter Crane, also General Clark as well. Thank you so much for your insights today as we look at images of other royals from Norway and Denmark also represented there, the kings of both countries. So it really does show the breadth of this allied effort, smaller countries joining large countries to take on Nazi Germany.